It's bad enough if you're suffering or in pain or having a difficult time, but everybody around you in your circle of friends or family are at least supporting you, right? It's bad enough, but at least if you've got other people around you in your community who are there bringing you food or cheering you up or visiting you, that has a way of pulling you through. Even harder than that are those times or circumstances where somebody is suffering and everybody else just sort of turns the other way because they've decided either they can't do anything to help and just don't want to pay attention to it, or your suffering makes it easier for them somehow, and so they'd prefer just to pretend you weren't even there. Sometimes we throw euphemisms at situations like that. Well, it couldn't be helped. They were going to be necessary losses. It was just collateral damage, right? There's times when we all find ways to ignore and then justify ignoring other people around us who are hurting. And if you're part of the crowd who's ignoring somebody else, you find strength from all these other people who are ignoring us, so it's not my problem, we're all doing this. But if you've ever been the one that feels like, why is nobody paying attention to the way that I'm suffering? Why is everybody else turning away? Why do I feel so alone in this? You know how terrible it is to be dismissed as someone else's collateral damage. I hope you've never been through that kind of situation, but knowing human beings and the way we do this to each other, there is at least the distinct possibility that you've been there. So maybe you know what it feels like to be a character in this coming Sunday's gospel story we're going to take a look at as we return to the Gospel of Luke. And Jesus has gotten his disciples in a boat to go across to the far side of the Sea of Galilee. That's where those Gentiles live, those outsiders, those non-Jewish people live. Jesus goes across to the other side of the sea, and they're met by this man who has just been ostracized by the whole rest of his town, his whole village, his whole community, because he's troubled by unclean spirits, in fact, a whole legion of them, supposedly. And this guy has become so dangerous to the rest of the community. They have no idea what to do for him. They don't have any medicine, they don't have any tools, they can't cast out these evil spirits, so they just shun him. They're like, you know what, it's better if he just goes off by himself where he can cause less damage to us. So they don't let him live in town anymore. He just sort of lives off, chained up in the graveyard, and there he lives. Well, this guy comes out and meets Jesus. And Jesus addresses him, speaks to him, and casts out these evil spirits. Now, the evil spirits in this story don't want to just go into oblivion. They want to cause as much damage on their way out as possible. So they beg Jesus, at least let us go into that herd of pigs over there and cause some more damage on our way out. And Jesus is so laser focused on helping this person. Fine, just go, set this man free, allow him to come back to his life. So the evil spirits go into these pigs, and the pigs go rushing off the cliff into the sea and are drowned. When the townspeople find out and they see that their neighbor, who they had conveniently ostracized, when they see their neighbor is in his right mind and he's whole and he's well again, instead of throwing a parade, instead of being excited and saying, oh, our lost neighbor is brought back to us, thank you, kind stranger, they're afraid of Jesus and they want him to leave, because he's upset their established order, right? He just cost them a whole herd of pigs, right? Jesus has cost them their bottom line, even though that's Jesus' way of bringing their neighbor back to them. It's meant to be sort of a sign of just how completely out of whack this town's priorities are, right? That instead of caring about, we've got Fred back, or whatever his name is, they're more worried about their financial losses, and that Jesus' action has exposed that they had all basically just given up on their neighbor Fred, the guy possessed by the demons. They had all decided it was easier to turn away because either they felt like they couldn't do anything, or the problem was too big, or there was just no way to deal with it. So sorry, tough luck for you, neighbor. You're out in the tombs possessed by an evil spirit and we can't do anything about it. Jesus shakes up that reality so that all the neighbors are now attuned to, all the whole community now realizes, oh, we shouldn't have just pushed Fred out. We shouldn't have just gotten comfortable with him being collateral damage. Part of what Jesus does in our lives is not just to heal our hurts and our wounds, but sometimes we're not the demon-possessed man in the story. Sometimes we're the neighbors who've just decided it's easier, it's more convenient to look the other way when someone else around us is hurting. And maybe we do it because we feel powerless. I don't know what to do in this situation, so I just want to ignore it. Or I don't feel like I could help, or the troubles are too big for my ability. When Jesus steps into the story, all of a sudden, all the old impossibilities sort of melt away and new things become possible. But also, Jesus calls us to turn away from apathy and complacency and indifference, and sometimes the ways that we just write other people off as, well, it couldn't be helped, there were going to be casualties, it couldn't be helped, there was collateral damage. To care about the needs of people who we so easily overlook, sometimes intentionally. To be a follower of Jesus, as Jesus' disciples are in on this story, is going to change the way we see the world, so that nobody is expendable anymore, so that we don't get to write people out of the story or pretend they aren't in the scene because it's inconvenient for us. Jesus is going to do something to our vision so that we see everybody. And even if it's not in our power always to fix everything, as often it is not, at the very least, we can be with those who are suffering rather than ignoring them or pretending they aren't there. If you've been there before, if you've been in that place of feeling like you're hurting and everybody else is looking the other way, you know how terribly lonely it is to be there. But if you've ever been in that place and someone has come beside you and said, I see you, I care about you, I'll be with you, even if I can't fix it, I'll be with you, you know it makes a world of difference. Jesus is going to do that to our vision. Be prepared this Sunday as we explore this story and what it means as disciples of Jesus to have Jesus change our vision to see everybody, even those we've conveniently overlooked. See you on Sunday.